The silence wasn't just the quiet of an empty nest. It was the deafening sound of a lie. You think you know the heart you raised, that sometimes a small click can shatter 16 years of trust. A mother's love is built on a foundation of faith. And when that foundation crumbles, you realize strength is a quiet thing. Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. I know you come here looking for a little comfort, a little truth, and maybe a little heartbreak share. If my story touches you, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It truly helps me keep sharing these life lessons with you. Now, let's start. My name is Clara May Harrison, and at 68 years old, I've learned that the greatest heartbreaks don't all come with loud shouts. Sometimes they arrive in a whisper, or in my case, on a perfectly bright screen. The Georgia heat this past August was a heavy thing, like a wet blanket laid over everything. But I loved that heat. It reminded me of my late husband, Thomas, and the way he'd wipe the sweat from his brow after mowing the pristine front lawn. Our beautiful Georgian colonial home in Peachtree Creek. He's been gone 3 years now, and the house, this lovely, quiet place, has become both my comfort and my cage. I had thought it was our forever home, the place Eliza would bring her children one day. Eliza, my daughter. My only child. She's 32 now, a high-powered attorney in Atlanta, living in one of those sleek glass towers downtown. She calls it making moves. I call it forgetting where you came from. That's where our little rift started, really. Her ambition. She'd always sigh when I suggested she come to the church picnic. Mom, I don't have time for a 5-hour round of small talk and soggy potato salad. She moved out 8 years ago, but in my mind she never left. Her room, pristine, just the way she left it. A few dusty trophies. A picture of us from a church pageant. I'd wander in there sometimes, running my hand over her vanity, remembering the happy times, the smell of cheap hairspray and teenage dreams. I'd stand in the kitchen and flash back to Thomas spinning her around the linoleum floor, her giggling, her tiny voice saying, "Daddy, again." Eliza called every Sunday, exactly at 6:30, but lately her calls have been rushed. "Hi, Mom. Everything good? Got a run, massive brief due." Always professional, always distant. I tried to tell her about Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning lemon bar recipe, or the new pastor's sermon on faith, and I could practically hear her eyes rolling over the phone line. I'd hang up and stand by the phone table, feeling the familiar, hollow ache of a mother who realizes she's become obsolete. What I didn't know was how much she was keeping from me, how deep the silence actually ran. My evenings are quiet now, the kind of quiet where you can hear the clock tick, tick, tick. I've developed a ritual. A cup of Earl Grey, the sound of the evening news. Humming low, and my tablet. I check on my little community on Facebook. I check on friends. Send a few likes on pictures of grandkids. It's my gentle way of staying connected without having to put on my social face. It was a Tuesday evening. Thomas's favorite mug was in my hands, and I was scrolling through the feed, sipping my tea, a quiet grief settling over me like dust. I had just liked a photo of Janelle's new puppy, when the algorithm, that strange, omniscient ghost in the machine, suggested a post to me. It wasn't a friend. It was someone I barely knew, a college acquaintance of Eliza's from years ago, a girl named Bethany Rhodes. I paused, wondering why the site thought I needed to see Bethany. I tapped the name, just out of curiosity. Bethany's feed loaded. The usual. Travel pictures. A photo of a gourmet sandwich, then a photo carousel. That's when I saw it. It was a beautiful picture, honestly. A wedding photo. Bethany and her new husband, smiling on a pristine beach somewhere tropical. A perfect sunset casting that golden glow over everything. I was about to click away, thinking, how nice for her, when my breath caught in my throat. Because standing right next to the groom, not as a bridesmaid but in a crisp white suit, laughing as she tossed a handful of confetti, was Eliza. My Eliza. And beneath the photo, the caption wasn't about Bethany. It was a secondary congratulatory note. Bethany had written, "So happy to celebrate not just our wedding, but also a belated toast to the newly minted Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Congrats again, you two. So happy for you, Eliza, that you finally tied the knot. Mr. and Mrs. Smith." My tea sloshed over the rim of Thomas's mug and burned my hand. But I barely felt the heat. All I could feel was the icy, sudden shock that hits you when the world tilts on its axis. My daughter was in a wedding photo. My daughter, who hadn't breathed a single word to me about even being engaged, let alone married. And the last name, Smith. She hadn't even kept her own name. The name her father had given her, the name that was etched on Thomas's headstone. My eyes snapped back to the picture, to her laughing face, radiant, joyful, and completely, utterly silent about this massive secret. She looked so happy, so free, standing there with this man I didn't know, on a beach 1,000 miles from the altar where I thought I'd stand beside her. All the rush, all the distance, all the massive briefs suddenly made a sickening, crystal clear kind of sense. And in that moment, the loneliness of my house became a crushing weight, and the beautiful front of our life, it just cracked. I put the tablet down. I sat there in the silence, hearing only the distant chirp of crickets. The truth was out, not from her mouth, but from a photograph on a screen. How could my little girl, my flesh and blood, do this? Why the need for such a secret? And more importantly, why wasn't I enough to trust with her happiness? I realized that this house, our sanctuary, was now a tomb of lost trust. The betrayal was a choice, a calculated, professional move. And sitting there in the dark, I knew my response had to be just as quiet and just as final. I hadn't cried yet, but I knew the tears were coming right after I took care of business. Let's meet in the comments if this touched your heart. Your support means the world. Thank you so much for your sweet comments. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. The tea in Thomas's mug had gone cold. My hand was still shaking, even after I'd carefully wiped the spilled Earl Grey off the mahogany side table. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the blank screen of the tablet. I didn't cry. Crying felt too easy, too soft. This wasn't sadness. This was a sudden, sharp betrayal that felt more like a physical injury. I kept flashing back to the last time we talked about marriage. It was about a year ago. I'd mentioned her cousin Betty Lou getting engaged, and I'd asked Eliza if she was seeing anyone seriously. She had given me that dismissive, lawyerly tone she often used. "Mom, please. Marriage is a partnership, a legal contract. I'm building a career that doesn't leave room for those kinds of distractions right now." She had said it with such finality, such intellectual superiority. And now, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. A legal contract signed, sealed and delivered in secret, without a single word to her own mother. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and opened the pantry. I thought about calling her. I could pick up the phone right now, dial her number and hear her voice, sweet and unsuspecting. "Hi, Mom." I could say, "Eliza, tell me about your wedding. Tell me why I found out about your new life from a social media post from a girl named Bethany," but the words stuck in my throat. I realized something dark and important in that moment. The secret wasn't the marriage itself. The secret was about me. Eliza hadn't hidden the marriage to protect her career, as she probably told herself. She had hidden it because she knew my reaction, and she chose to avoid it by simply removing me from the narrative of her life. She must have decided that the only way to move forward in her new sophisticated, ambitious life was to silence the voice of her old one that would ask about church vows, ask about a home and children. She had chosen to live a life that had no room for her mother. That was the real, devastating betrayal. I walked back to the living room and looked closely at the man in the photo. Her new husband, Gregory Smith. He was handsome, in a corporate tailored way. Tall, dark hair, a confident smile. His arm was looped securely around Eliza's waist, staking a claim. I searched his face, desperately trying to find a hint of the kind-eyed young man I thought she'd marry. No. This man was a stranger. I felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp. Not at him, but at her. How dare she make me the outsider? How dare she turn my own home, the house her father built, into the scene of my deepest humiliation? Thomas would never have allowed this. I looked around the living room. The heavy curtains I had sewn, the worn leather of Thomas's armchair. This house wasn't just wood and brick. It was the story of my life. And Eliza? She was on the deed as my only heir. She expected this house to be hers. Someday. A valuable asset. A nice little chunk of equity for her sophisticated life. A cold, clear thought came to me. An idea so radical, so profoundly quiet, that it stole my breath. If my life is so easily dismissed, so easily excluded from her happiness, then my life, my presence, and this house will also be removed from hers. I would move. Not to a smaller place in town, not near friends. I would simply disappear from her map. The financial implications, the difficulty of moving, all of that was secondary. What mattered was the quiet, absolute finality of the act. I would sell the house. I wouldn't tell her until the papers were signed, and the money was in the bank. I would be as silent, as secretive, as professional as she had been. It was a terrible thought, a revenge soaked in maternal regret, but it felt like the only way to regain control. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't argue, and I certainly wouldn't beg for an explanation. I would just leave, quietly. I started small. I went to the old file cabinet in the den. I needed the title, the insurance records, the local realtor recommendations. My hands were steady now. The emotional shock had given way to a strange, almost surgical calmness. I was operating on a wounded relationship, and I was going to cut deep. I found the file for the house and pulled out notepad. I wrote down the number of the realtor. Thomas had always trusted Jim Carter. Jim was a nice man, went to our church, but he didn't gossip. That was important. Everything about this had to be done under the heavy cloak of silence. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I went straight to the closet and pulled out a small, old suitcase. I placed it on the bed and started packing. Not clothes, but memories. The little seashell Eliza collected on our first family beach trip, Thomas's worn Bible, the silver locket my mother gave me. Just the essentials, the pieces of my life that couldn't be reduced to a number on a closing statement. I looked out the bedroom window at the beautiful, manicured front lawn. You're a beautiful house, I thought, a silent farewell. But you're just a box, and the love that filled you has moved on. When I called Jim Carter, I didn't mince words. Jim, it's Clara May Harrison. I need to sell the house. Discreetly. And quickly. He paused. Clara May. Are you sure? That house is a landmark. I'm sure, Jim. I just need a change. Total change. Can you come by this afternoon, while I'm at the grocery store? He knew my tone. I'll be there, Clara May. I'll make sure everything is handled properly. No signs, no chatter. As I hung up, I felt a wave of icy relief wash over me. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for my daughter, the clever lawyer, to walk into it. The thought of her reaction, the cold fury that would follow when she found out, was the only thing sustaining me. I hadn't seen the true cost of her ambition yet, but I was about to find out, and the price was everything. Let's meet in the comments if this touched your heart. Your support means the world. Thank you so much for your sweet comments. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. The afternoon Jim Carter came by. I made sure the house was pristine. Not just clean but perfect. Dust-free surfaces. The faint scent of cinnamon from the potpourri bowl. Every pillow on the sofa neatly arranged. I wanted him to see the house not just as a piece of real estate, but as the cherished home it was. I wanted a quick top-dollar sale. A quick transaction was a quiet transaction. I left the back door unlocked and drove to the Kroger. Exactly as planned. I bought everything I didn't need. Peaches, paper towels, a new brand of iced tea. I sat in the car in the parking lot for 30 minutes, watching the slow pace of Peachtree Creek life pass by. It was surreal. Inside that house, a small, controlled explosion was taking place, the final dismantling of my marriage, my motherhood, and my home. When I got back, the back door was shut. A small, neat manila folder was tucked under the doormat. Inside, Jim's notes. He had walked the property with a professional, unsentimental eye. He had attached them. Comparable sales in the neighborhood. Value was even higher than I had expected. Clara May. His note began, his familiar handwriting clear and formal. The house is magnificent. We could ask for $680,000. Maybe more. It will go fast. Have 2 buyers in mind who are looking for exactly this kind of historic charm and don't want a public listing. If you are certain, call me and we can have papers signed within a week, closing in 30 days. The price wasn't a number. It was the value of the life Eliza had rejected. The value of the home she had planned to inherit without earning it. The money felt cold and clean, a perfect counterbalance to the messy, emotional debt she now owed. I called Jim immediately. Let's do it, Jim. The first buyer you mentioned. No public listings. I want it done before the end of the month. Understood, Clara May. I'll get the paperwork drafted. Are you sure you don't need help finding another place? He asked gently. No. Thank you, Jim, I replied, my voice steady. I've made arrangements. Going somewhere warm. I didn't elaborate. That was true, and the weather down south was certainly warm. I was just withholding the fact that warm also meant 3 states away. A tiny apartment near a coast I hadn't seen in 20 years, where no one knew the name Harrison. The next 2 weeks were a strange, silent ballet. I had to let a few people in: the appraiser, a quiet inspector, the 2 potential buyers, but I managed it all by scheduling them during Eliza's working hours. She still called every Sunday at 4 p.m., like clockwork, and every call was the same. Hi, Mom. Everything good? Just fine, Eliza. Taking care of things. Good. I'm swamped. This merger is intense. I'll call you next week. I look forward to it, dear. Bye-bye. Not once did she mention the wedding. Not once did she mention Gregory. She would never know how close she was to losing everything. It was a terrifying game, and I was holding all the cards. I began quietly selling everything. I couldn't pack into Thomas's old Buick. The heavy dining room set. The china cabinet. I took photos and posted them on a local site under a fake name, marking everything, immediate pickup only. I explained to the buyers that I was consolidating 2 households. It was a flimsy lie, that the prices were low, and people rarely ask questions when they sense a bargain. One evening I was selling Thomas's old work desk, solid oak, heavy as a barge. The buyer, a young man named Micah, asked, "Your husband must have loved this desk. It's got a real history to it." I looked at the desk, where Thomas had paid bills and planned our life. I felt a fleeting tremor of guilt. Was this too much? Was the cost of peace the destruction of my memories? He did, I said, handing Micah a glass of iced water. But memories aren't furniture. They travel with you. That became my mantra. Memories aren't furniture. The day the first contract came, Jim had emailed it. Of course, I looked at the PDF. The legally binding terms. The huge number representing the sale price. It was final. The house was sold. All that was left was the final walkthrough and the closing. I still hadn't told Eliza. I knew the moment I did, the fragile silence would shatter. I was saving that moment. I needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere where her lawyer's voice wouldn't reach me, before the final, devastating confrontation. I was packing my last box, the one with the Christmas ornaments, when I heard a car pull into the driveway. It wasn't Sunday. It was Tuesday. I looked out the window. It was Eliza's black sedan. Too soon. My heart hammered against my ribs. She's here. She found out. I scrambled. The contract was sitting on the kitchen counter. I snatched it up, stuffed it under the nearest magazine, and took a deep, steadying breath. I composed my face, the calm, slightly distracted expression of a mother who has nothing but casseroles on her mind. I walked to the front door and opened it, just as she was raising her hand to knock. Eliza, what a surprise. You're early this week. Her eyes were wide, and her carefully controlled composure was slipping. She looked stressed, not guilty. She wasn't here about the house. Something else. The quiet was about to break. I just didn't know which secret she was about to confess. Let's meet in the comments if this touched your heart. Your support means the world. Thank you so much for your sweet comments. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. Her eyes were wide and her carefully controlled composure was slipping. She looked stressed, not guilty. She wasn't here about the house. Something else. Mum, she said, her voice tight, a nervous energy surrounding her. We have to talk about the wedding. I stood in the doorway, letting the late afternoon sun frame her perfectly polished suit. The wedding? I repeated, my tone mild, almost bored. I stepped aside, inviting her into the living room that I had already emotionally vacated. Come in, dear. You look awfully tense. Did your merger go sideways? She walked in, oblivious to the fact that her childhood home was about to be legally transferred to a stranger. She didn't notice the strange emptiness, the missing warmth of Thomas's favorite chair. She was too consumed by her own crisis. No, the merger's fine, Mom. It's the whole situation. It's gotten complicated. She ran a hand through her sleek, dark hair, something she only did when she was truly stressed. She avoided my eyes, looking instead at the window, at the rose bushes she never liked. I sat down on the sofa, carefully crossing my legs. Complicated, you say? Well, life can be complicated, Eliza. Especially when you try to keep important things private. She finally looked at me, a flash of defensiveness in her eyes. You know? I know what, dear? I asked sweetly. Do I know that you're suddenly interested in gardening? Or do I know that my only daughter got married in a ceremony I wasn't invited to, and I found out through a social media post from a girl named Bethany? The air went thick. She flinched, visibly the Lauia facade cracking. Her chin trembled slightly. Mom, please, let me explain. It wasn't about excluding you. It was about timing and pressure. Pressure? I leaned forward, my hands resting calmly on my lap, giving the performance of my life. Who was pressuring you, Eliza? Was it Gregory Smith? I let his full name hang in the air like a heavy weight. It was my firm, she snapped, then immediately softened her voice. And Gregory's firm. We work for competing firms in the same field. High-stakes corporate law. They have a strict no fraternization, no spousal hiring policy in certain divisions. If they found out we were married, one of us would have to quit, or at least be dramatically sidelined. I absorbed this. The corporate world, the ambition, The cold logic, it was exactly as I had feared. Her career was the idol she worshipped. So, you chose to hide your marriage for 8 months, I stated. Not as a question, but as a summary of her case. You chose to start your new life with a lie to your mother, so you could protect your 6-figure salary. It's more than that. It's my life's work, Mom. We waited until we were both up for partner. We planned to announce it next month, after the final decisions were made. We just had a small private ceremony in St. Kitts. A justice of the peace. It was nothing fancy. It was temporary, I whispered, the word tasting like ash. Is a marriage ever temporary, Eliza? Is the silence you built between us temporary? All the grief I'd suppressed for weeks rushed into my voice, but I kept it low, sharp. I buried your father 3 years ago in that churchyard, the one you never visit. That man, Thomas, gave his entire life to building a good, honest life for us. And you, our only child, couldn't give him or me the simple dignity of sharing your happiness. You valued your corner office more than your own blood. You told me I was too simple to understand the tax implications of marriage. But the truth is, I was just too simple to understand the coldness of your heart. Her eyes filled with tears. Real tears. Not lawyer tears. That's unfair, Mom. That's not why. Then why? Did you think I would object to Gregory? I would have just wanted to see you happy, Eliza. I wanted to meet the man you chose, to give him your father's blessing. But you took that away. You decided I wasn't worthy of being a witness to your life. She broke. She sank down onto the chair opposite me, burying her face in her hands. The powerful lawyer was gone. It was just my little girl, overwhelmed and afraid. I'm sorry, Mom, she choked out. I didn't think. I was scared. I was so scared of losing my job. And Gregory kept saying it had to be a total secret. Gregory, the stranger. The influence. The cold logic I had been fighting her whole adult life. Eliza, I said, my voice hardening again. I have something to tell you. Something that, perhaps, will show you the true cost of secrecy. I reached behind the magazine, pulled out the manila folder, and tossed it onto the coffee table between us. The papers slid out, revealing the headline, Sales contract minus $1,285 Peachtree Creek Road, Harrison Residence. What is this? Her breath hitched. She picked up the papers, her eyes scanning the legal language she knew so well. The buyer's name, the closing date, the sale price. Her face went pale, whiter than the white shutters outside. Mom, what have you done? You can't sell the house. This is our home. This is my inheritance. You never said a word. I smiled, a tiny, chilling smile of absolute finality. No, I said, standing up, finally looking down at her, the daughter who had once looked up to me. I didn't. Just, like, you never said a word about your life. I decided not to say a word about mine. This house is just an asset, remember? A property with tax implications. And I decided it was time to cash out. I'm moving somewhere warm, Eliza. Somewhere you won't need to feel pressured to call me every Sunday. I walked over to the front door and opened it wide. The final closing is in 10 days. You have 2 hours to gather anything you want from your old room. After that, I'm locking up for the new owners. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The shock was complete. I had repaid her silence with an earthquake. I had taken her inheritance, her security, and her assumption of control, and removed it with the same quiet ruthlessness she had used on me. The quiet was back, heavier and colder than before. It was the sound of a life being completely, irrevocably erased. Let's meet in the comments if this touched your heart. Your support means the world. Thank you so much for your sweet comments. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. Eliza didn't move for a long moment. She was still sitting on the chair, the sales contract clutched in her hand, staring blankly at the open front door. The expensive lawyer's suit looked suddenly cheap, the powerful composure gone. Her inheritance, her security, and her life plan had just been quietly demolished. "Mom," she finally managed, her voice a reedy whisper, thick with disbelief. "This is insane. You can't do this. I'm your daughter. This house, it belongs in the family. Belongs to the family that honors it," I countered, my voice flat, holding firm. The surge of anger was fading, leaving behind a cold, desolate exhaustion. "Your father and I worked 40 years for this property. We sacrificed for it. And you treat it like an asset you can ignore until you need the equity." I pointed to the contract in her hand. "Read the fine print, Eliza. Your name isn't on the deed until I'm gone." "I am not gone. I am simply moving. And you had 10 days. Now, you have less than 2 hours. Your choice." I turned my back on her and walked into the kitchen. I started running the water for the teapot, the mundane sound a stark contrast to the emotional devastation in the next room. I needed that simple ritual, that physical anchor to keep myself from breaking down. Inside, the regret was a slow-motion burn. Was this the only way I could teach her? By cutting her off financially and emotionally? A minute later, I heard her sharp, hurried steps on the stairs. She wasn't begging or arguing anymore. She was complying. The lawyer in her had taken over-damage control. She was assessing the loss and calculating the salvage. I stood by the sink, listening to the muffled sounds coming from the second floor, the opening of the closet door, the dragging of a suitcase. She wasn't just grabbing memories. She was grabbing things of value. My mind drifted back to the night Thomas and I had agreed to put her on the will as the sole beneficiary. He had looked at me and said, "She's a good girl, Clara May. She always have this place to come back to. Our legacy." I felt a tear trace a path down my cheek and quickly wiped it away. The legacy wasn't the house. The legacy was the honesty and the trust we built. And she had traded that for a promotion. The 2 hours passed in a terrible, charged silence. I didn't see her again until she appeared in the hallway, dragging a large rolling suitcase and carrying a garment bag. She paused by the door to the den, where Thomas's desk used to sit. The space was unnervingly empty. "Micah came for the desk," I said quietly, answering the question she hadn't asked. "Memories aren't furniture." She swallowed hard. "Where are you going, Mom?" "I need to know." "Where will you be?" "Somewhere warm," I repeated. "And somewhere quiet. I don't need my life managed or scheduled, Eliza. I need peace. I need honesty." She tried one last time, reaching for my arm. "I can fix this. I can call Gregory. I can tell them the truth. Delay the partner decision. We can try to get the house back, Mom. I'll buy it back." "No," I said, gently pulling my arm away. "You can't buy back trust, Eliza. And you can't delay honesty. The truth came out when you needed a lawyer, not when you needed a mother. That tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in your life." I picked up my own small bag, the one with the essentials, the memories that truly mattered. I didn't need the money yet. I just needed the freedom. "The closing is next Thursday. Jim will mail you the details. And the rest of the paperwork." I didn't wait for her to say goodbye. I walked out the front door, leaving her standing alone in the house that was no longer hers. I stepped out onto the porch swing and paused for just a second to breathe in the familiar scent of the neighborhood, the faint sweetness of the magnolias. Then I turned and walked to Thomas's Buick, which was parked on the street. I got in, put the car in drive, and didn't look back at the beautiful colonial house. I drove slowly, deliberately, past the church, past Mrs. Henderson's garden, past the life I had planned for the rest of my days. As I reached the end of Peachtree Creek Road, I saw her in my rearview mirror. Eliza was standing on the lawn, the front door ajar, holding her suitcase. She was finally alone, face to face with the empty space where her mother and her inheritance used to be. The silence I had imposed was now her burden to bear. I was leaving her with the wreckage of her own secrecy. But what I was driving towards, I realized, was a silence I truly deserved. The sound of a fresh start. Let's meet in the comments if this touched your heart. Your support means the world. Thank you so much for your sweet comments. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. The drive from Peachtree Creek to the small coastal town in South Carolina took the better part of a day. I didn't play the radio. I didn't stop for anything more than gas. I just drove, watching the familiar Georgia pines slowly give way to the low-country marshland and the smell of salt water. The money from the sale, all $680,000 of it, was secure in an account Eliza didn't know about. I had severed the financial tie just as cleanly as the emotional one. The new place was tiny. A furnished, second-floor apartment overlooking the ocean. It was nothing like the large, stately colonial home, but it was mine. It was paid for, completely. The only things I had brought with me were Thomas's Bible, Eliza's seashell, and the boxes of essential memories. I spent the next few days in a haze of unpacking and silence. I walked on the beach, letting the wind pull the heaviness from my shoulders. The vastness of the ocean made my pain feel small, almost manageable. I had traded the quiet of an empty house for the honest roar of the sea. The final closing on the house was held the following Thursday. Jim had handled everything remotely. The papers were signed, the key was transferred, and the Harrison residence officially belonged to strangers. My act of quiet revenge was complete. I knew the reckoning with Eliza was coming. The day after the closing, she called. It wasn't the usual Sunday at 4 call. It was a Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock, a time she was usually in a courtroom. The caller ID was Eliza Mobile. I let it ring. And ring. And ring again. I had muted the phone and placed it in a drawer. I wouldn't let her crisis interrupt my peace. She tried 4 more times that day. Then she switched to text messages. The first ones were frantic. Mum, Jim sent the closing documents. What is going on? We need to talk. This is insane. I've retained a lawyer. I smiled sadly. She's retained a lawyer. Of course she has. The messages shifted to anger. You can't do this. You've stolen my inheritance. Gregory is furious. You did this to hurt me. Call me back now. Still, I didn't respond. I walked on the beach and watched the pelicans fish. Then, the messages changed one last time. They became quiet, broken. Mom, I went to the house. It's empty. They changed the locks. I just wanted one last look at Dad's chair. You didn't even leave me a forwarding address. I told Gregory about the secrecy. I told him why. We had a huge fight. It's complicated. Please just tell me where you are. I'm scared. Mom. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was so arrogant. I thought money and career were the only security. I realize now that I lost my real home because I lost your trust. Please, just let me explain. I miss you. I read that last text message standing by the window of my small, sunny kitchen. The tears finally came, not tears of anger, but of sorrow for the mother and daughter we had failed to be. She was finally honest, but the honesty had come too late and at too high a price. I didn't call her back. I didn't send a long written explanation. I had said everything I needed to say when I handed her the sales contract. Instead, I walked over to my desk, took out a simple postcard of the coastal sunrise, and wrote only 3 lines. Dear Eliza, I received your final message. I hope you find the peace you are looking for. Clara May. I mailed it the next day. It was the last contact I had with my daughter for a very long time. I had broken her trust. Yes, but only after she had broken mine. I had exchanged a beautiful, cold house for a quiet, warm sense of self. My life now is simple. Long walks on the sand, small groups at a little community church, and the company of my own quiet thoughts. I don't check Facebook much anymore. The painful noise of the outside world feels far away. I don't know if Eliza and I will ever truly repair the fracture. But I know this. I stopped fighting for a place in her life and started building a life for myself. I taught her the most painful lesson of all. That a mother's presence, like a parent's home, is not an asset to be taken for granted, and silence can be the most powerful statement of all. Let's meet in the comments if this touched your heart. Your support means the world. Thank you so much for your sweet comments. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.